A statue unveiled this afternoon in Georgetown tells the story of freedom and the man who lived it. James Bowley, grandnephew of Harriet Tubman, is being memorialized at the Georgetown Library, the result of a 4-year effort and more than $100,000 raised. Live 5 Simone Roberts joins us from the Georgetown Library, where the ceremony is going on now. What does the moment mean, Simone, for the people who made it possible?
It means hope, nurture, inspiration, and a celebration of their own history. That's what the community asked for, and that's exactly what's standing behind me today. James Bowley moved towards freedom, guided by his grandaunt Harriet Tubman, before later moving to Georgetown. Now, Georgetown is making sure that legacy isn't forgotten. 4 years together from the Friends of Georgetown Library and the Georgetown Library and family of Bowley, along with artist Wesley Wofford, came together to create art celebrating the legacy of one of their own. Together, they looked to fundraise $4,500,000, and an anonymous donor matched that goal, adding $60,000 as long as the statue was life-sized. Now, James Bowley will be memorialized, hearing his grandaunt's wisdom as they move towards freedom. The artist hopes the statue not only represents history, but lets children and adults see the importance of it.
Hope that children can see the importance of where they came from and where we collectively came from, to use those lessons to make a better future. And I hope that adults see the importance of inspiring and nurturing that next generation to build the future that they couldn't achieve in their lifetime.
Just like James Bowley and Harriet Tubman moved towards history, years later, this Whispers of My Ancestry calls this library home, and it drove 6 hours. Now residents will be able to touch history, not just look at it. Reporting live in Georgetown, I'm Simone Roberts, Live 5 News.